Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Me Dark Presents. We are here at the Platypus headquarters, which is sort of where this whole thing began as our visual effects company. Today we are talking about our film, The Pig, and I'm joined by my co-creators, writers, producers on this. I was one of the directors on the film and the screenwriter. And with me today is my creative crew here. So who do we have to my left? Corey, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Corey Pierno. I've been in film and television for about 15 years, and I've worked primarily in stunts and stunt coordinating and some directing and some writing as well. And I've gotten to do some pretty cool stuff. So.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah, but
don't be modest.
This was.
Don't be modest.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
He worked with Scorsese. Bastard.
He did work with Scorsese on. That was that cool music show, right?
Yeah, vinyl. Well, and again, like I was stunt doubling Andrew Dice Clay in a scene, and he's wonderful, but he obviously couldn't meet some of the physical challenges that we were trying to get. So that was a really fun one.
Say.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I mean, it was honestly a dream moment because I was laying on the ground with Bobby Cannavale bashing my head in with a vase, and Scorsese comes over and starts giving us notes, and it was just one of those surreal moments of I could die here. This is good. This is good.
Sure,
this is really great.
I forget where did we hook up with Corey on what? Like where did we?
I work with Corey on VFX supervising on a couple of movies.
Yeah, was it through Tony and Summer? Or was that the first one?
Yeah, we met on a couple of sets, maybe 3 or 4 projects.
I just liked him so much. I kept
poking
what's
him.
not
to love?
He has that effect on people.
So
like a bad penny.
Yeah,
Just
right.
don't go away.
So Pete, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure.
Let everybody know.
So I'm Pete Sussy. I'm the owner of Platypus, and Mark and I, he was prior to Platypus, we worked together, and he was my first guy, my main right-hand guy, going back to 2010. But I think we met probably 2008.
Probably right
at an ad agency that I was a senior creative director at, and we hired Mark, and and we've been together ever since. Amazing editor, amazing just talent, and Platypus does. I think we got over like 40 movies that we worked on now.
We've done a lot.
Yeah, something like that. Some main movie theater projects and some smaller indie projects. But yeah, it's kind of a mix. We also do work with the NFL, like stadium graphics. We did. We also did a lot of TV commercials. Beauty products, kind of product 3D animation, motion graphics. So it's kind of cool. And then a couple years ago, Mark was very hot on like trying to get a movie division on here. So we took that kind of a leap and kicked around the idea of the Pig and coming up with,
many
which I'm
ideas.
Sure we'll get into iterations of, but
ideas.
we kind of bounced ideas back and forth and writing what that's going to be. And of course, TJ came in. I'll let TJ do his thing in a second. But yeah, so and that's what we're trying to get off the ground now. So it's a great because it dovetails into what Platypus does, and having the VFX and the shooting that we do for commercials is kind of a nice tie-in for this. So it's
well, that's
sort of
that's sort of why it just made perfect sense, right? Because like TJ will talk to this, my brother. And he was like, I don't understand. He's like, you guys have all the stuff, right? That was your thing. You're like, you have all the things. Like, just do it.
Yeah. It's an easy transition
at
that point. That
Speaking
becomes a
of
barrier
TJ,
for a lot of people is like,
it is
sheerly what it costs to even pick up the camera and get a production quality movie at the end.
Yeah, so you came, we brought you in probably, I guess maybe a year before we made The Pig.
Yeah, it was like probably that summer I started here was when we were kicking around the original idea, and you guys hadn't told me like the very bare bones start of it all.
Right.
And then, so I'm a musician by trade and a songwriter. So I came on to do the audio and the sound on set and everything and just learn VFX. These guys sort of gave me a crash course into all of that and sort of touched on a little bit of everything with this. So yeah, it was just exciting, growing the tool belt, learning different ways to enhance your artistic vision, right? It's cool that with a film, it's really the concert of all art together. Yeah. You need a whole team of people, the elements of the music, and it's just you learn so many layers of the process along the way, and I'm so grateful that I was able to come on and be a part of this with these guys.
It's interesting because, you know, TJ, you also have a great ability, you know, when we saw the script, coming up with ideas and like tweaking, and I think you know, what's nice about you, I think a lot, is that, you know, you're in touch with like an emotional angle of something, which is kind of nice. So do you think like the songwriting and this kind of stuff dovetails into each other?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's all storytelling at the end of the day. You have to, how do I build a character that someone can connect to, and how do you make it real? It's like easy when in the beginning of starting a character, right? Like, oh, what do they look like? The normal demographic hits, but the true, like, all right, why would this character do X, Y, and Z? Like, I love that sort of stuff. And it's the same as a song. You're trying to unearth this sort of hidden truth to connect people.
And where's
to
the juice? You know, how do you get the emotion out of this?
Honestly, it was awesome for me to see, because obviously, you know, like you said, Pete, we've spent decades of time trying to hone our craft and learn all this stuff. And we had this really long runway in which to do it. And he had to come in basically and just like you said, it's a crash course. Like, let me just learn everything at once. And I think I remember you saying, like, while we were making the film, or maybe it was like after the second day, you're like, I would have had no clue what goes into making a movie at all. And you're like, it's not at all what I expected, but I totally get it now. And it's that hands-on experience of just like being on the set.
Especially on an indie level. You know, it's so much more guerrilla.
And we'll get into that. I mean, because this is a bear, man. This is a bear.
You bite off a lot.
So obviously, you know, we had Platypus, the visual effects company. Now we have Red Octopus Films, which is our, hopefully, blossoming
movie arm of
movie production company type of thing. And right now we're dabbling in our own ideas and trying to put, you know, actually just trying to hone this craft as well, because there's a lot of craziness that goes along with just shooting a movie. So let's talk about The Pig, which Pete and I took turns directing more or less. Corey came in as really a great resource in order to handle some of the physical stunt kind of stuff. We had to dunk a guy in a tub. That was very scary for everybody, because I didn't know what goes into. And
it's funny having a professional. To me, if I was with my buddy and like, let's fake the scene, I'm going to put you under the water. But don't worry, I'm not going to drown you. You know, it's like that kind of. And Corey just dampens everything. It's just like, you can't do that with actors. You have to like make them feel comfortable. Like, you know, you don't really put them under water. It's like all these guidelines, and it's interesting how. All right, I guess we got to.
We got to be professional.
You see it really with stair falls, because they'll want to do a stair fall, and the director will get. I've had this multiple times. The director will be really eager, but like, can't they just fall down the stairs? It's like, you can. Be my guest, but we're hiring these people, and they do want to go home. And so
no,
you know, we
I
don't
totally
necessarily
get
ask
it.
our actors, but the footage was still great. I mean,
it came out great.
It's all movie magic.
This actually, we were shooting this. Well, we were still kind of in COVID, right? So some people had masks on and blah, blah, blah. But it was also right after the whole thing happened with Alec Baldwin when he shot someone on set accidentally. And we had the gun. The gun actually doesn't ever end up in the movie for The Pig. We cut it out entirely. But there was a whole thing where Dr. Moret has a gun. And the idea being that, okay, if he's going to transform these people into ridiculous, brutal animal creatures, right? It stands to reason he would have something, if it goes awry, to protect himself and shoot.
I mean, we were fine. You know,
we didn't need it in the end.
You know, we didn't need it, but I didn't think anyone felt uncomfortable. I was pretty aware of that.
Oh, I mean, overall, let's talk about the cast really quick, because I think we got very lucky in terms of who we ended up casting. We used Backstage, which is a great website for anybody that's looking to do this. You could pretty much just throw any kind of job up on there, whatever you need. You need a lighting guy, you need an actor, you need
the amount of talent that responded to was insane.
Well, we also happen to be in New York, right? So we have to take that.
My 21-year-old actor self is cheering to hear that, but I never got cast through Backstage. So as an actor, it felt very frustrating.
Well, honestly,
but it worked out for this.
That probably happens a lot, because in my conversations with most of these people, aside from Brian, because Brian Anthony Wilson ended up in this thing, and this guy has a humongous list of stuff that he was in The Wire. This guy does a lot.
He's in everything.
And I remember when we first watched his audition tape, it was like, oh my God, well, this guy's got the part. Like, he was absolutely perfect. And But aside from that, everybody else that we sort of casted was very, very grateful that they were able to land a job like this because, and they're like, oh wow, you guys are like a real company. Like you guys worked on Bone Tomahawk. Like this is cool. You know? And I think that actually helped maybe everybody bring their A game for us. Is like they kind of all knew like this is going to be legitimate.
I think it's one of those industries that I you know, like they want their best self out there.
Absolutely.
And there's, you know, sadly, probably not a lot of options for people to get to show their chops off. So when you have like a legit, you know, even on a smaller scale, when you have a legit company trying to pull something off, and you have an opportunity to, you know, show something off, and it's amazing now where, because we've done casting, you know, we would use casting agents in the past or whatever, and now it's like amazing. Like people would just be like, they got their iPhone and they sit in front of their kitchen and they do it, you know. So not only are they using that to try to get on the movie, but they're using that as their reel.
Right.
So now it's just like, whoa, you get a real movie where, you know, you're showing off your stuff. I'm like, even if you're not getting paid a ton, like this is like a legit thing that I get a credit and it looks great on a reel. Which, you know, we're all kind of like-minded on this. Obviously, we're trying to get something off the ground. It's not like we were like amazingly funded or anything, you know, all of that. So we were all like, what's nice about it was a passion project. Yeah. Whenever you do a passion project, you know that people are there because they want to be, you know. So not that there wasn't money spent on it, but it wasn't like no one's getting rich on it, right?
No, we kept the budget pretty modest. I think, you know, for what it was and what we had to do, you work around those restrictions, right? And I think it's good advice too, is like, don't just turn down a job because it's not paying enough, right? Sometimes you do have to look at the big picture in terms of your career, or even like you're going to take on a passion project, you know, you're probably going to be in the red, right? You just gotta, you gotta take the hits and then just go, all right, well, eventually the hope is that this turns into
well, I mean, you look at even Platypus, if it's a different model, but like sometimes like you might take, this is a really cool shot that they want, but they really don't have the budget for it. But like, what a cool shot. And like this would look amazing on a reel. If you have the time, you're going to take the ride because, you know, you want to put it on your reel. It's something to show, and you are getting paid something for it. If you can break even a lot of times, that's wonderful, but a lot of times you don't.
Right.
But because I have that, because we've done this in the past, you get bigger jobs. If you're a shooter, you got to shoot. If you're a VFX guy, you got to VFX. If you're, you know, you got to get stuff done. So it's kind of nice where if I can get paid doing it, great. You know, if not, I probably have to be doing it anyway. So, you know, take what you can. Yeah,
I mean, like I said, it was a bear, and I think
and it became more of a bear as time came on.
It does become more of a bear, and I think it's a good segue into starting why did we make this thing, right? Why did we? You could make anything. Why did we choose to make this specifically, right? There's a whole laundry list of reasons. We had started out. I had said, listen, let's just do something very simple. I wanted to do some sort of a transformation thing, right? We wanted to back into our visual effects as like, okay, this is a strength of ours. So let's come up with a cool horror thing that, you know, is a visual effect. And I thought of like, okay, werewolf transformation is cool. Let's maybe try to pull something like that off. And it originally was just Gus, right? He was the only character, and he's searching for something to eat in his apartment. And he finds this radioactive can of soup. Basically, he's a hoarder. There's just crap everywhere.
Yeah, we love the hoarder.
Yeah, knocks into a wall and a can goes rolling, you know, underneath.
From like every character we workshop starts out as like he's a hoarder. Like it's like for some reason.
Do you want to unpack that, TJ?
Yeah, I don't know.
Should we look a little deeper?
Yeah, there's something.
It's got a lot of stuff around that.
I think the idea for us was just texture, right? Rich environment, and also it's trying to convey a character in a it's a short, right? You have a very short amount of time, so you say, all right, visually, how do I tell the story of this character? Because he's by himself, there's minimal dialogue,
right? And you know what? We probably could have done a really interesting short piece just doing that, like a little vignette of a guy in his apartment, and
he eats the soup and he
finds
transforms.
Soup and he trans, right?
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, how do we add this? And you know, it's funny. Like the difference between Mark loves horror, and I love drama.
Yeah.
Now that being said, I love horror that's a drama. Like you show me The Shining.
The Shining.
I love that. Right?
Amazing.
So if you give me something like that, I love it. So I was like, well, how do we There's got to be a reason why, right? So then I'm a little bit of as I get older, a little bit of a history buff, and I read something back in like World War II where the Russians were kind of experimenting with animals and trying to do like hybrid, super race. And I'm like, wow, that's like a crazy interesting, interesting thing. So, well, like how does it tie into our character. And one of the characters I love is Apocalypse Now, and I love the Colonel Kurtz, the Brando character. He was this general, and he had his mission, and he kind of did what he did, and then all of a sudden they pulled it out from him, and he's angry about the hypocrisy of everything, waxing poetic about how much he hates how the world is one way and making him be something else. So I was like, imagine you got a guy, like trying to merge those two things together. Imagine you got a guy who's, it's back in the 40s or whatever it was, and they're doing these, and you could do the same thing in Vietnam because they experimented with a lot of mental drugs and stuff like that too. And this guy is a scientist, and it's his life mission to create something. So essentially I thought it was interesting combining those two things, where this guy spent his life, his life's work doing something, and now all of a sudden society, it says it's an abomination, and the government shuts it down, and he's just like, what am I doing? I just spent so many years of my life.
Which was hard to get. It's like, it was hard to get all of that backstory into it. Yeah. And we ended up going with the old newspaper clippings, right? Yeah. It's like, all right, we'll just show the history of him going into this field of he's doing stuff for the military because he's this brilliant DNA scientist. But then he gets arrested, and it's like, oh, what's going on? But you have to follow it up the newspaper.
There's the Colonel Kurtz moment in there where he does the flashback scene, which was edited great, by the way. I love the way that
the transformation.
The transformation, and that kind of wraps it up.
It does.
I'm trying to do something good for the world.
Yeah.
And all you care about is creating more wars, and
And that character got created because you and I found, because we weren't sure where were we going to shoot this thing. So we found this awesome, abandoned, stripped down old brownstone in Brooklyn. Really rich, beautiful. And the kitchen was all the
floor was being ripped
hanging.
up,
Shit was melted and just grimy. It was really rich texture environment. Oh, and the basement area was nuts.
It was like a dirt floor, and it was all uneven, and it had stone walls.
Yeah.
It was. So texture-wise, it was amazing.
We were pretty much in love with that place, so much so that we were like, "Listen, this is the place. We're going to rent this place." We wrote a whole script based off of that location that we were going to make. And I think that's at the time when we had brought you in.
Yeah, when was the whiteboard? I remember that whiteboard session.
Yes.
That was after that. You had seen the brownstone.
Yes, it was right after the brownstone.
Yeah. How was that whiteboard session for you? Because I was a bit nervous coming in.
Honestly, it was great because
in that capacity.
You were actually responsible for creating the character of Lana, because Lana originally was just Jack's love interest, and she was sort of split into two characters, and we merged her into one basically. But I still had this idea of the traditional horror thing where it's you have the heroine, femme fatale, girl at the end, and she's sort of the survivor, and she's the one that you're rooting for. And while you were doing the whiteboard session, you just go, you know what? I'm just sick of that. I remember you saying that, what if we just make her the asshole? And I think from there, it just something clicked in my head. Right. And then I started to think about, all right, yeah, I kind of like that. And what is it? What is it if we flip it to where the guy, Jack, is the more sympathetic? He's a family man. Yeah. And, we established that he's running a company with Lana, but he's also trying to attend to his wife and his child, and it's his day off. She's dragging him over there. And we tried to push as much sympathy as we could into
also,
the
what's really nice about the Lana thing and making her kind of bitchy is the fact that, we made the Pigman character kind of empathetic. You feel for him.
Yes.
He's kind of the Igor to this evil brother doctor, where he really probably had no choice in this, and now he's doing what he thinks is right. So there's a little bit of a, he's like a poor schlubby guy who's kind of meek, and Lana beats on, which I think, I think with horror movies, you look at people especially in the sequels and stuff like that, Freddy Krueger, they start rooting for the monster, right?
You do. Yeah. And this was the thing with Jason. I was like, I just started rooting for Jason.
Yeah. so having Lana be kind of aggressive, the espresso machine should go here, and this should go here, and she's that guy. You could tell she doesn't care about humanity.
She was an amazing. She brought an amazing performance too. She really leaned into it.
Yeah, Alice K. Johnson. Just an amazing actress.
And the scream. The scream is still amazing.
No, the
first time she did that, we were just hanging out.
I had the headphones in. I wasn't prepared for that.
And I'm like, whoa, man, she brought the A game on that scream. That scream was great.
No, what I liked a lot about her is I coming into it, I felt a little worried about us in our desire for shortness and brevity having to be a little one-sided or one-dimensional.
Right.
Like I think there was definitely a period of we still need to figure some things out, and she brought such a great element to it. That felt owned, in a way. So
No, it really felt like they all came in really understanding the character that we wanted them to play. And and I almost I kind of pat myself on the back for that a little bit, because I was like, wow, I guess my script really conveyed what it needed to convey. I was worried about that.
also, it's good to bring in actors.
It's great to bring in great actors.
Great actors make such a difference.
Yeah, that's truly what, obviously they're all incredibly talented, but the understanding level of the mind meld and the shared vision of you didn't really have to bring them along and they got it.
Not to diminish you at all. But
No. Listen, I'm always the last person to pat myself on the back. So, but I think that's sort of part of the process, right? Is as I'm going through it, I start to realize the weight on me. I'm like, well, in a way, I've sort of carefully orchestrated all of these intricate, obviously with help, but I'm now it's there's a lot of stress on me to make sure all right, I didn't mess up my part, did I? Because everybody else is coming in and I'm like, wow, everybody's doing a great job. And I'm I got to make sure that I'm on that level too. So obviously, the cast was awesome, but we ended up not getting that brownstone. That guy wanted a crazy amount of money. Locations.
It wasn't crazy for a legit movie, but for an indie, it was.
Locations are expensive.
And it gave you no flexibility. Literally, if you're a couple hours over, you're out the door at 6 o'clock, whatever it was, or 8 o'clock.
I think that's a pretty common New York challenge, in that New York's a pretty seasoned film town, so locations know their worth in a way. You have to kind of find the people who've never encountered.
Here's the beauty. I mean.
Yeah, so we ended up actually filming right here in the office.
Yes. Where's right here?
Well, this is the old Grumman building, right? Which a lot of the history about. If you
right, so Grumman's, if you go to World War II, they made all the coolest planes, and they also made the F-14, in Top Gun. They, that was all built here. And I think this was built, in the 1930s. What was interesting is they left this building, which is a huge. They have a landing strip here. They had multiple hangars, factories. It's a huge plot of land. They moved out in the 80s, and then there's so many buildings here now that they never got all of them filled. So there's a top floor in this office that probably hasn't been touched in about 40, 50 years. And it looks it. First of all, it's kind of old, and second of all, it's in various stages of deterioration. And I was like, wow, from a texture point of view, this is amazing. And the character was, as we were saying before, he gets kicked out of his job, working for the government. So what's he going to do? He wants to keep continuing his thing. So he needs someplace that's private, so he can continue his things, and he needs someplace that's probably cheap, right? So the second floor of this place just looks like an old rundown factory kind of a thing. And texture-wise, it was just amazing, and it gave us some great, various environments. The bathrooms were very old, the offices are old, the main floors are old, and some are wood floors, and they're deteriorating, and the walls are deteriorating, and it just looks amazing.
Oh, Mark, you remember the cleanup we did beforehand on our hands and knees with masks, vacuuming all of the debris
with the
up
shop
there.
vac. I actually think you can see the shop vac in the shot at the end where Jack is running, because that whole area, that big open area that he runs through, was absolutely disgusting.
Wasn't it glass? Right?
There was everything.
We wouldn't mind it. It was just thirsty.
And I remember we walked Corey
Yeah.
through this, and he goes, "You guys better make sure that like none of this is on the floor."
The wet rag, Corey, just ruining all of our fun.
Well, yeah, Corey was like the one that's like, all right, guys, this is what you want to do. This is how we do it.
You can't ask actors to roll around in glass.
Look, as the person who has to tell them to roll around in the glass, it's helpful when we set it up right.
Listen, it would have been a lot of trouble without you. So yeah, it's fantastic.
No, absolutely. And yeah, that was a grueling cleanup. And then you and I would sort of, I remember like in between, I forget what we were working on while we were filming the pig, but I remember you and I would sort of find pockets during the day to go up and like, all right, we're going to set design a little bit of Gus's room, and we're going to we're going to figure out like how we can dress this area where it looks like his office or whatever.
Yeah, that was a huge advantage that we had access to the space like that.
Yes.
Because like, again, coming from never doing it before, you have like this abstract idea of like how you would do it. But then you're like, oh no, wait, I want to like go do this little thing. And that it adds up so much. And like
it
that
does.
freedom
And
to
by
be
the
able
way,
to just pop up there is, it was
Grumman was
insanely
super sweet
valuable.
to us. Like they gave it us like next to
Yeah.
dirt.
Yes,
Like, it was very
Steel
generous. of them.
Equities ended up allowing us to shoot for free
Yeah.
for nothing. Well, because we obviously we're tenants of the building.
Which was they didn't have to. Which was very.
They didn't
nice
have
of
to
them.
do that. Yeah, they could have easily given us a hard time and whatever. I mean, we ended up, I think, only with a couple of complaints. I remember when Brian was in the that little staircase when he's doing the hello, is anybody here? I mean, he's a loud, boisterous guy. And who was it? It was a Tesla? Because Tesla, I think, is right here.
It's such a big conglomerate here that people have no idea what you're doing.
They had no
right? So
idea.
It's the other side of the building. They probably don't even know who we are.
No.
And all of a sudden, we're outside their hallway.
And you're like, it's okay. They said we could film here. And the guy's like, what are you guys doing? We're just trying to conduct business.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're shooting a movie.
I think we'd be disappointed if someone didn't do that. I mean, let's be real.
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, having access to the space, like you said, was a huge advantage. But obviously, we weren't without our production challenges, right? We needed, first of all, we needed a security booth, right, for one of the shots, which doesn't exist here. We had to make it from scratch.
Yep.
That was kind of a crazy VFX shot. I remember you spent days trying to make
I
sure
was
the
just
textures
learning
look real.
about 3D and messing around, like putting random decorations in it, like making it all homey, like a real security booth.
Yeah, you were putting like the smudges on the glass. So
It's crazy.
Well, wait a
seeing
second.
it
Wait a
after.
second. We used an office.
Well, that was the interior we used the office.
The
But
actual,
Yeah.
for the
shot,
actual exterior shot, that whole
Was 3D,
security booth is fake. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's just crazy seeing that from the beginning, the first time I touch it, to like what it ended up becoming.
And it came out amazing, by the way.
Yeah,
it looks,
yeah,
it looks
yeah.
so good.
Like from my untrained eye, like if I hadn't been a part of it, I would have never been able to be like, that's 3D.
I remember you and I going back on that
Yeah.
shot many times because it was it's very hard to get that stuff to look real. It just, especially that is a very big piece
And it was close
to
to
put in
camera.
a set, and it's close to camera.
Yeah.
But dude, the bathroom shoot was rough. Remember how hot it got in
Yeah.
there from
Yeah.
the humidity just building up?
Yeah.
When we had
Although
the
not
tub,
an uncommon experience to be in a room
Okay.
too small for cameras and too hot for lights. Yeah.
That was probably, I remember, I think at the end of the day, we were the most disappointed with how that came out. Not because of the actors, I think, did a great job. But like you said, we were very limited in space. We couldn't really get the angles we wanted. We couldn't
But that
really
never
execute.
I mean,
if you
that
had-
never goes away. I mean, like every show I've done, inevitably there's a scene in a bathroom. And unless you're building a bathroom set with a flyaway wall, it's
gonna
just you
Hitchcock
get
that
what, you
bitch.
get what you get. And so
well, now if you have the budget and you have like a giant studio where you can rent gear from, like they have so many like little toys now, like these little lights. They're literally like a flap, like an 8x10 piece of paper, and it's an LED light. You just throw it in a wall, and it works. They have some amazing stuff, but like you can go down a rabbit hole getting all that stuff. So.
Yeah, lighting actually has gotten a lot of, I mean, we use these little GVMs a lot on set for the pig.
For pickup shots, like they're just small,
You know,
quick,
they're just very lightweight. They run on battery. They throw off a decent amount of light.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen the stuff for the creator, right? They're talking about. I think they just use Titan tubes, like
Really?
on C-stands. Oh, I mean, look at the behind the scenes of it. It's pretty cool.
Okay, cool.
You know,
No, I didn't.
It's they used very low footprint lighting setups
And practical whenever you can is great.
Yes.
Like you get those beautiful bokehs and you get like these little pools of light. It's really
So
beautiful.
that was the other thing is we did have to shoot Jack at home in his kitchen. And originally the plan in the schedule was to go to your house and to shoot in that kitchen and then break down and then come here
Yeah, how
and then
cute of an idea
shoot
was
the
that?
whole rest of the movie basically.
Yeah.
We shot this thing in 4 days,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we only
was it 4
had
days or 3 days?
4.
Okay.
The pen was 3 days, I believe. It ended up being, by the time we got everything settled, it was just like, there's just no way we're going to be able to do 2 locations. So we had to make our office kitchen work, basically. And I think you were like, you know what, just take the biggest, brightest light we have and just shoot it as if it's daylight, a window.
Coming off the side, yeah.
And I think we put like some sort of, I don't even think it ended up doing anything.
We
but
put some
tried,
fake plants on the opposite wall that the camera can shoot through. So it looked like it made it
like
look
a dappling
smaller.
of, like almost like it was like coming through trees or something.
Yeah. And it works.
It did. It did the job for the short scene.
I'm always amazed coming out here because you two downplay the like very like people on other shows will spend a very long time planning these things, and you're like, man, just move the slide here, move the slide here, put this camera here, just slide this over here. Oh, it looks amazing.
Yeah,
and you're like,
works.
I'm just gonna make a 3D guardhouse in post. It's like you downplay this stuff that's incredibly difficult and hard to do, and then you're like, it was really hard to set design the kitchen. It's like, pretty sure it wasn't. Pretty sure I could do that.
I think that's the least of your problems.
Pretty sure all the rest of the stuff.
Well, speaking of which, so this ended up being 18 minutes long. We ended up with over 100 visual effects shots for this.
Yeah.
Partly because the Gus face is just a mask, right? Yeah. So what happens when you wear a mask is you could see, where the eyes,
the neck seams, all that stuff.
Where the seams are. And again, because our production timeline was so short and we only had 4 days to do this, I said, Pete, do we really want to spend time with our stunt guy, Mark, in makeup and then so we can cover these seams? And then he just has to sit there, this poor guy, all day. So you actually came up with this
Which first
technique.
time anyone's ever said poor stunt guy.
I know. Listen, Mark Rose, he was an absolute gem to have. I mean, he was amazing. Because I think you had some schedule conflicts one day, and you're like, you know what? I got a guy who, what was it, Jim, who came in?
Yeah, Jimming. He's another amazing New York stunt, longtime stunty and incredible fight specialist. And
He does he did like some Marvel shows, right?
Oh yeah. We've all done the circuit, but Jimming. But,
Mark was awesome. But you came up with this technique in using Mocha, where you basically track a mesh onto a surface, and then you do your little retouching to hide the seams. And you sort of set TJ loose with that. It was sort of like, here's the process, and here's what we're going to do.
The guy who just started VFX, we just threw him at it. And we'd throw him a life raft every once in a while.
I remember even when
TJ
he's
was a beast.
stabbing the security guard, how many shots was it? The reverse of the neckline.
The neckline was worse.
Yeah, it's like, it adds up so fast. You don't even think that sequence when you watch it is like 10 seconds, but it's like 8 shots of the back of his neck you got to clean up. So it's just
you muscled your way through some crazy shit.
Yeah, it's just like all the cleanup is what really added up to those 100
That's
shots.
what it was.
Yeah,
That's what, like when you say 100 visual effects shots, people are like, I remember when we said it at the Big Apple Film Festival, there was like a gasp. Like, what are you talking about? There's 100 visual
That's
effects.
because normal folks are at home being like, how do I do one visual effects shot? So once again,
but we also were like, we left. There's not the shop vac, but you could see the stand, like the C stand.
That was part of that shot he was talking about. There was a C stand. There were some wires. I remember, when
you're running gunning like that, it's near impossible not to mess up something. You're going to forget.
Yeah.
Well, also, again, to Corey's point, you end up with limited space in some of these.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's a wire there with the box that controls the light. And it's like, where else are we going to put it? Like, it's in the shot. So you just go, you got to clean it up.
But sometimes those limited spaces, there was that one shot, well, 2 shots. There's the original shot where you first see Gus and he's watching the cartoons. And we do the slow kind of a pan
the reveal.
off the wall. And I love the shot, and unfortunately it didn't really fit in the movie. And I was like, wow, this would really be great. You just hear him giggling, and you wall, and then the slow reveal. I'm like, Mark, I love this. We got to put this in there.
That was the switchboard room, right? Because that room has such amazing.
And then there's the
room,
transformation scene.
Yeah.
And it's so tight in there, but it looks great because it's just, and you had a great idea from shooting. Luckily, the wall didn't go all the way to the ceiling.
Yeah. I got up on a ladder and shot.
And we shot over the wall, and that along with the real tight personal things, and then we did some VFX magic in there with the eyes and the hands, transforming, which was kind of cool.
I remember we were running some tests in the office with this idea that we were going to try to, you have that monitor that does like a ghosting almost, and we were going to try to match up.
It,
and it wasn't going to work because we did a 3D scanner. TJ did. of the head. And you were like, you know what? Let's just shoot Lane as is.
Yep.
And then what we'll do is we'll just take that 3D scan and we'll track it and line it up and then it was just a matter of, okay, once we have Lane's face or, you know, his ear or nose, whatever the element was, we can then just go to this. There was a really cool morphing plugin.
Yeah.
Where you sort of, you know, you take little anchor points and you sort of, all right, here's where the pig's nostril is, here's where Lane's nostril is. I need to go from this point to this point, and you just sort of manually plot your
And what's
points.
nice also about that morphing plugin is, you know, the mask. By the way, it's a fantastic mask. It's
Immortal
a silicone
Masks
mask.
makes that. Anybody could buy
What a
this.
beautiful, and then they make these awesome arms that you have on the table here. And fantastic for what we needed. Jesus, it was great. And what was nice is that, you know, like there's a couple of hero shots of his face. And, you know, it obviously, unfortunately, plays as a mask, you know.
Yeah.
But you can use the morph plug without an actual morph. But you can, instead of going from A to B, you can kind of go from A to a distorted A.
Version of it.
So we can have a little bit of crunching on the face, a little, you know, squinting of the eyes, and then the nostrils flared, I think, a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And it was just enough to give it a little bit, like, I don't even know if your eye really picks it up.
It
because
does.
It's so subtle.
It does.
But like your brain says, okay, there's a little bit of a forehead movement there. There's a
Right.
little bit of this going on. And that helps sell it. You know, and unfortunately, that was another disaster. We have the ideas and we know how to do it, and then we just say, yeah, it should be no problem, and we give it to TJ, and then we let him rock.
Like, what is happening?
No, you did awesome with it. I mean, and you know, you had to muscle through it. It wasn't an easy path. You got to muscle through it, but it worked.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, because like we said, we established up front, we are a visual effects company, right? And we had jobs going on at the same time that we're trying to, you know, birth this humongous baby.
Which is why Dan, who's not here, who's also worked on a pig, who's amazing. Yeah. You know, Dan and I basically held down most of the fort with the project.
Yeah, so we tried this sort of ping
pong. The Foscolo brothers did a majority of the shots, and then Dan and I hopped on the end. Some of the heavy
you
lifting,
sort of like hopped in as support, or
just
would
tell you how to do, like how to approach. You
There's
know?
always certain things that pop up where I just kind of look at a shot and I go, I kind of need Pete's brain on this. You know, I don't really know what's it. So you were supportive in that regard. And then obviously, you know, you had the techniques of like how to execute stuff, and then basically TJ and I at that point can just go and do the work.
And then we hopped on at the end and did a couple of like some heavier shots. Yeah.
One of the things that it sort of ended up biting us in the ass a little bit was the Jack kill.
Yeah.
We couldn't really figure out how we wanted to kill Jack. It's so much so that we ping pong back and forth so many ideas. At one point, it was, let's just have the pig just punch straight through his head. And then we're trying to figure out, all right, well, how do we do that shot? And then by the time we actually got up to it, it was like, what, 10 o'clock at night? Dustin had missed.
I think our day ended at like 8 or 9. And we were already doing a shot. And it was like 9 o'clock. We were already over like an hour or so.
Well, Alice had to
and they
go.
were like, we have a whole other scene to do. And you don't want to be abusive with actors, nor did we have the extra day to like throw on it.
Right.
So it was
Yeah,
rough.
we only had Dustin for that day. And then Alice had to go. So we were like, all right, let's get Alice out of here. We shot that final scene of her in the chair.
Yeah, but that phenomenal arm
The arm rip thing was cool.
is incredible. I mean, that was the same day.
You really helped block that scene a lot because there was some stunty things that had to be done. And we didn't really necessarily have the exact setup that we wanted for that.
Yeah. You mean VFX wise?
And even just practical wise, like it was like, all right, we want Lana to sort of be stuck trying to get through an area, but we had originally envisioned it as like maybe there's like a small hole in the wall, but we just had to do it with the door.
Yeah,
and then you really helped us sort of block out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any plan you enter the enter the scene and all plans go out the window. I mean, to me, as long as it's feeling real, as long as it's connecting real,
especially in
that's
indies.
The only thing that matters.
Especially in
I don't think there's any level where the plan goes to plan. I always say like if it doesn't feel like dogs chasing a rabbit when trying to get an action scene, then we're doing it wrong. Because if you gotta feel like you're chasing something that
I've
is
had
close.
I've had the pleasure of working on VFX supervising on several movies with Corey, and seeing Corey do his thing. And, it's amazing because it's like, well, what are we doing today? Oh, we're shooting 2 scenes. And I'll see Corey, it's just like people having breakfast and Corey's blocking out a shot,
Yeah.
and then like it's nighttime and it's like ready to go. You know, it's just like, and I'm like, wow, like okay, that's how you devote that kind of time to it, and it's just like we're like we kind of have an idea, but we have 20 minutes to do this.
I think kind of is a better way to come at it. Anyway, I really do. I think
just
like
kind of have an idea.
Kind of have an idea, and then when you're in the space, you say these are the realities of what we have.
Yeah.
Because Mark would always say, and I understand, like we should storyboard this out and have it like very blocked out, and which I get, like but sometimes like you see an actor and after you hang in with an actor, you're like, no, that's not him.
Yeah,
he wouldn't do
100%.
that. Or like, I see him really more like this. Even not even just words, but like actions.
But I mean, all the departments that really, really need storyboards, we're doing anyway. You know what I mean? Like knowing how much of the world we're seeing each shot, so you prep ahead of time.
Yeah.
Those are all crucial elements in a big production, but they're not our problems on these indies. Whereas like, I don't know, you point the camera, we're in the space.
I think what ends up happening ultimately, and it's the same thing that sort of happened with the second short that we did, is you sort of go in there and you say, okay, we have 3 cameras, we have 3 guys manning it. It's like, just get coverage, right? You sort of just default to just try to cover everything as much as you possibly can. There's not as much time that you could spend crafting the shot and getting that beautiful painterly frame.
Well, it's like I love lighting, right?
Yeah.
So, but
it's hard to do on the fly.
On our second movie, Mark would be like, wow, like the lighting came out like just everything looks good, but like this one shot looks horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell? Like, and I know, like, listen, you don't always have the time that you want, but you have enough to like say, okay, it's passable. And I realized like there was a shot where I framed up the camera, shooting it, and I'm like, this looks great. And there was like a rim, like a really narrow rim light. And then I realized Mark was doing coverage, and he literally went to the opposite side, almost parallel with the light.
Right.
And it's just like his face is just blown out with light.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, like what you're saying, you need the coverage, right?
Yeah.
That's indie. You have time. You have a limited amount of time. But then like it sometimes will backfire because like, wow, this shot looks really good.
Yeah.
But in order to get this shot looking really sexy, like the lighting needs to be just for this angle.
Yeah.
And then
agree.
now what happens is you realize when you light, okay, it's got to be more practical and organic.
Yeah.
And you really can't sculpt the light. Because I was always amazed where, you look at a regular movie and you're like, what a beautiful rim light. That looks great. And then you look at the reverse angle, like, wait a second. Like that guy no longer, like they relit that guy.
Yeah.
But you don't realize it, right?
Yeah, they're not shooting cross coverage at the same time.
Right. So, and then they'll change the light totally. And if you really pay attention when you watch a movie, like, wow, that they really, his face is totally different.
When I was working on soap operas, it was literally like they lit the whole space and just pointed all the cameras at it.
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
why
they
this-
light
that
everything.
feels
But you don't get that sexiness, but-
there's no, it's not as artistic.
There's no mood.
In the same way. There's no mood.
I mean, the
no
other
tone.
way of going about it is that, you keep it practical.
Yeah.
So like it makes sense if there's a light behind him and it's got a hot spot on the back of his head as well, he's standing in front of the light, right? So but it's okay because that's in the room. You know what I mean? It's not. It doesn't look odd because it's there. So it's finding that balance of artisticness, and Mark and I have been working together for such a long time that we have a shorthand of what we like.
Yeah.
And you like this, but it's just like, oh, I want to see his foot hit the floor. I want to see him grabbing this handle. I want to see his eye for a split second.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's just like, I got to do this insert shot. I want to do this insert shot. And it makes sense, but then it's also like at the end of the day, like, well, we're behind 3 shots for the
That's
day.
okay.
So it's
that's
like
okay.
finding that balance of...
The fact that you start respectful is really the most important part. Like, it's only 4 days.
Yeah, but you always try to massage it, and you try to, throw more stuff in there. And
that's sort of, I mean, everything that you're talking about, it did build up to us sort of being at the end of our rope with that Jack scene at the end where we're just like, we all want to go home. We're exhausted, but we just didn't know what to do. We're like, how do we kill him?
And sometimes when you have your back against the wall, you get some of the best stuff, right? Because you're saying it's just like necessity drives invention,
also like,
right? But then sometimes you're like, I probably, if I had another day or two, I probably could have came up with something better.
That's true. But I mean, even still, like we were on sticks a lot, and then that last piece that was very moving. There was lots of like kinetic evolution to it, and the choreography we found, I think, definitely worked. Smushing his head into the pillar.
No, I think we were very, very lucky with how everything sort of fell into place.
It's amazing what you
luck.
cram into. Mark always makes fun of you and I. He's like, I remember the last day, it was like 11 o'clock, and I just saw you on the stairs. And you were just like that. I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm 56. Like,
so I remember.
I'm feeling that shit.
So the opening scene of this movie, which I think
Whippersnapper.
you and I ended up loving the most out of everything, was the opening scene. We're like, this is the best scene in the movie.
Yes.
Outside, probably the transformation is
Yes.
also probably up there. That was the last thing that we shot.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, that was another long day with Tom, and Tom did an incredible job with Dr. Moret. And I remember that while I was editing the film, there were some shots I couldn't use because I'm shooting towards that little staircase, and like you could see, like Corey's like sitting on the staircase. Or, like,
I was in the shot.
Napping.
Look, you got to take the naps where you can go.
Corey's like, they don't need me for this. I'm just gonna take a load off.
What do you call that guy? Did
No,
you just
honestly-
fall asleep like in an instant? What's that called?
Narcolepsy.
Yeah,
No, it's pragmatism. It's just no. Honestly,
No,
like,
listen,
at that
I'm
point,
there with you. I was
you know,
feeling it. I was feeling it.
As much as, especially in these small projects, I've you don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you two are running such an amazing creative spearhead, specifically with directorially camera and lighting. It was just like, no, I don't want a voice right now.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well,
What
I
you're
think
doing is
that's
amazing.
your experience comes into play there too, where it's, and I think because we were always quick to get your input on anything, and we were always trying to bring you in, even to the creative vision. Like I said, like
Look,
with Lana and everything.
yeah.
I think it ended up being a great balance because we all I think we all had great chemistry working together. We knew when it was time, okay, I'm going to step back and Corey's going to step in, or Pete's going to step. We kind of knew when it was, okay, this person's going to take
I'm just happy you guys let me come and play. That's the,
Yeah.
that's the main thing.
I mean, we've tapped on Corey a couple times where we tried to get something off the ground, like just little vignettes.
Yeah.
Because he was like, stunt guys, they want to look, they want something for their reel.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, shit, like we want to shoot some cool stuff and like cool stuff. And
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe there's some synergy where
Yeah.
we can put some things together. So
Yeah. Well,
I'm sure moving forward we'll have
Yeah.
some of those fun things,
There's always that mini mob short we didn't do.
Yeah.
That we rehearsed and
Yeah.
I have
There is
like
an edit of
a
it
very
somewhere.
rough edit of
Oh
us.
yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to see that.
I thought I'd sent it to you.
Yeah, we can
I'm
send
not
it again.
sure, maybe.
You had
That was right before.
you had choreographed a whole thing with. I think that idea was something like he was like
No,
he
it
was
was-
supposed
it
to
was-
get whacked by the mob,
it
and
was-
then he comes for revenge because
No,
they
yeah. It was from The Godfather in the scene where he's like, take the cannolis,
Take
leave
the
the body,
cannolis,
take the
right.
cannolis.
Yeah.
Well, the joke was that, he wasn't dead yet, and so they came back, and there was a whole thing.
Yes.
And I think it's fine that we didn't shoot it, but I think it was a great process. To
Honestly, I think it would have been fun. We
Yeah.
were trying to shoot it over at again. The hurdle there was just getting the location. Really, it was just very
Yeah.
hard to secure the exact.
We found the oldest, most decrepit old man bar.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
yeah.
And they're like, can we shoot it? Which, they probably have 3 people going there during the day. That being said, I won't say the name. But I was like, oh, we got to ask the owner. And you think he would like we're going to pay you for the day, but we never heard back from them.
Never heard back.
So,
That's
all right.
But yeah, that would have been amazing because it was an old 1950s bar.
I still don't understand the motivation behind people that allow films to rent their spaces, considering some are like $25 million mansions and some are just, hovels and dive bars. And I think it's people have to want to be in film.
But texture,
I think
it's
usually
great.
the location, the people that own those spaces want something to do with film, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, outside of that, personally, I ended up with a little bit of a challenge on the sound design, and I went back and I watched like some of my first edits of The Pig, and I'm like, oh my, what was I thinking with some of this music? Like, it's like comical. Like some of it was like very quirky, and because I did have to use so much stock music in The Pig is the one thing that I sort of wish I can go back.
Yeah.
And maybe bring him in and be like, let's actually make some custom music.
That
for
being
this.
said, there's some amazing stock stuff that's out there right now.
There is some amazing
stuff
yeah.
out there.
So, but now with the one that we're working on now, which is called Of Gods and Pens, TJ did a lot of original music for that piece.
Yep.
So that was sort of like a lesson learned of like, all right, well, we have this capability of making our own music. Might as well bring that into the equation as well. And that's sort of kind of what's next for us, right? Is we're trying to now birth this other baby.
Right.
And this one...
Which is real close.
It's real close. This one is about twice the length. It's about a half hour long.
Yep.
And that concept came out of... I don't even remember. I think...
It was a
kind of
similar start to like the Something in My Soup because Pete was sort of like wanted to do something
Starts in a hovel.
basic that's
Yeah.
like high energy, and he's like, what if it's just like a guy trying to get a pen to write? It's almost like, in Ice Age, like the squirrel with the nut.
Yeah.
It's like that sort of like, that was sort of like the core of the idea.
It was a vignette. It was meant to be a vignette.
And
yeah.
I was like, well, what if it's like, why does he need the pen to write? Because my head always goes to like the motive and like, what is this character? And then we were out at the restaurant right down the street, and we were just like, well, what if it's a magical pen?
Yeah.
That it stops working and he needs it to work.
Yeah.
And then now you build in this whole tension of, while he's trying to get this pen to work, there's stakes to it. And then we just sort of like spitballed it back and forth from there.
Yep. And it's a nice balance of like everybody added stuff to
Yeah.
the story, which was kind of nice.
It's so cool to see like how an idea grows from
Yeah.
the ground like that,
Yeah.
where it starts as something completely different and everyone adding in a little bit over time. You figure out what it is. It's
Yep.
like you're chipping away at the marble.
And we got an amazing, great cast on there
Yeah.
too, which I'm looking forward to showing off. That'll be great.
Yeah. They again, we've just been getting really lucky.
And by the
with some of
way,
these
let's just
people.
talk of Pigman. We got what, like 6 laurels so far, which
We
is
got
kind of
6
nice.
laurels from film festivals. Yeah, the film festivals stuff it's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's very because I didn't realize first of all how many of them there are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
And I think again, talk about lessons learned because this was our first one, and I found that website Film Freeway, and I was like, look at this, Pete. You could just we upload our
one point of contact, yeah.
one point of contact, and you could just submit to film festivals. And obviously, they charge you. Which makes sense because they are putting on an event. They're showcasing your work. You know, obviously they should get something for it. But I think in hindsight now, I mean, you can really get caught up with just submitting to festivals that are just nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice. Laurels are nice. It's nice to be
Yeah.
appreciated. But I think,
I think being selective about exactly where you try to place
con or nothing.
Well,
think of it with music too, like in playlisting and streaming.
Yeah.
Like the whole streaming avenue opens up that whole like, there's just a lot of gimmick to it also, and you have to it's the experience of knowing like how to navigate it.
I see this this is marketed to me all the time on Instagram now. These like promote your music and we'll put you on playlists or whatever. And it's like these companies that like you pay, but it just seems like a scam.
Yeah, like some of them are definitely legit, but some of them are not.
So this is the
it's
same
the
thing.
same where it just
Well, I don't know though. I think like finding the audience that wants this kind of stuff is at the heart of it. So a film festival might pop up to say, let's become an aggregate. I don't think they're clearing a ton of
Well, Mark,
No.
you brought
And that
You know what I'm
honestly,
saying?
that
But,
is sort of
like they're
to
all
your.
trying to. I think everybody. Maybe this is my optimism showing, but everybody's coming at it with good intent.
I think that's fair because
know?
I ended up just submitting to ones that specifically were like very horror themed.
Yeah, but like Fantastic Fest used to be smaller and is now much bigger.
Now it's bigger.
And it's fantastic, and it's absolutely in the genre.
we got
So
into
it's-
that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You brought up a good point too, Mark, because I was like, well, who the hell's going to see this thing? And Mark was like, and he's right. There's a lot of people who they just watch all their entertainment on YouTube or something like that. So there's like a market out there for people who are going to give this a chance.
Yeah.
Because
Also just people
that's what
that
they
want
have.
it.
Yeah.
People that want it.
I mean, I lurk on the horror subreddit all the time, and every once in a while, there'll be a whole feed about horror shorts. Like people just looking there. People go down YouTube rabbit holes just watching horror short after horror short after. There's definitely people that
Which
like this.
As
kind
I was
of
saying
content.
before, I'm more of like you give me Goodfellas, I'm a happy guy, right? But I'm a more drama guy, and Mark's more of a horror guy. But what was kind of interesting is horror is kind of an interesting thing, because if you look in, like you don't really need necessarily like big names or big budgets to be successful at horror.
Sometimes it's almost to your benefit to not go that
Which was
route.
one of the catalysts why we ended up going in that direction, because
It's
it was
cheaper
kind of,
to make a horror
It's
film.
cheaper, and you have a better chance of success
And
at
let's
a
face
lower
it,
buy-in.
It's
fun too. Don't get me wrong.
It's fun and it is much more forgiving, right? If you set out to make a film like Goodfellas, like you better not miss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
it
that's
could be corny real quick.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. And you got to catch lightning too. I mean, look, there's some movies out there that you say like, I don't know how this is so popular, but it's popular. Like it did well. I mean, not
Well, let's
taking
face it,
anything
it's
away
a
from
pig monster. Like it's fun. It's cool.
Yeah. It's goofy. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Why did we do I don't even remember why we did a pig. It was just funny, I guess, to do it. Oh, because
I
the
think
guy was a sloppy hoarder.
he was sloppy.
He
Yeah,
lives in a
and
sty.
kind of like
Also
wait a second. So originally when we were doing the brownstone, right?
Yeah.
It didn't almost like personify or something, like wasn't there something in there? That
Well,
was
because he was this hoarder and he lived in this.
right, and he was brutal.
I also think like in that whiteboard session we talked a lot about the opportunity for certain kills with a pig, especially because of the chewing
Yes,
and
the eating,
the eating things and the chomping, and it felt different. It felt more like grinding than a bear, for instance, which feels like a chomp.
Yeah, or and it's very slashy.
Yeah, I think there was.
And you can
some
also
very,
kind of be human with a pig.
Yeah,
It's not as much of a stretch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where there's, the physical body structure could be similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Upright.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'm very happy with how the whole character turned out. And we had your friend Alexandria, right?
Yeah, Alexandra.
Yeah.
She was going to school for like fashion design and had a lot of interest in doing wardrobe for movies and stuff like that. So yeah, I was just like, hey, we're making this short. If you want to help us out, like it's one less thing for us to do. Because it's like not a capability. It's like there just ends up being too many things for 5
And
people.
she aged it really nicely too.
Yeah, no,
she did a great job.
I knew that she knew what she was doing, and she would take care of it to the level we would be satisfied with. So like, she just went off and ran with it, did a great job. She even bought everything.
We got lucky with that too.
Yeah.
And then we found that guy John Shorter. He owns New York Prop Rentals, which is actually here on the ladder.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And I called him up. He gave us a whole tour of his little warehouse thing, which is, he's got some crazy stuff there.
Yeah.
But he hooked us up big time. We just basically took anything and everything that he kind of had that was like mad sciencey lab kind of thing.
He was very generous to
and
us.
he had the tub.
Yeah.
Which was crazy because the whole Fishman thing, that was a whole other. Pete had added that. He's like, well, maybe we should like tease the pig with like a different creature. And,
Yeah, set it up. Yeah.
And then we were kind of stuck on the fish. And I'm like, well, how are we going to dunk this guy in water? Like, where's it going to come from? And luckily that guy had a bathtub.
Yeah, an old retro bathtub. And,
And now that whole thing ended up being a cluster because we basically just shot Scott, the guy who plays the captured man, just as Scott. He didn't have any prosthetics on whatsoever. No, nothing, no tracker markers, no nothing, right? And we were just confident, like, we can track this and we can add all the stuff we need to in post. And it just never came together. And then I remember getting very nervous, like, how are we going to do this fish? Man, it's just like, and I kind of said to Pete at one point, I was like, I think we just have to either bite the bullet and like create a whole 3D character rig and just animate over the top of it. Or I don't know, like maybe we'll do some sort of paint thing in Photoshop. Ended up being that this is when the AI generative tools had just sort of came out. And I was very interested in what the capabilities were. And I was learning this program called Stable Diffusion. And I was like, you know what? They have this function in here that's called image to image, where basically you could feed it a frame and you can basically type in a prompt. And I think the prompt that I ended up using that worked was a cinematic still of the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Right.
And it used him in the frame and then replaced him with this creature. And then I started tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. And eventually we sort of landed on a still frame that was like, okay, this kind of looks like a blobby, gross, mutated thing. And then we paired that with this program called EBSynth or EBSynth. I'm not sure how you say it. But that just took the single frame and tracked it and animated it to the full. Yeah. And it ended up working out, luckily.
Which it's like to do that shot like 10 years ago or something, and for example. It's like the amount of people and time. Yeah. It's just crazy to think like you could get there.
The
like
underwater portion specifically, or when he was standing?
When he stands up,
that's a great kill,
and he's actually the fish.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, well, now he's got to look like a goopy fish.
Because I know we were talking, we were trying to use the technique we did for the pig to map on a painted face and kind of have it track, but it just wasn't working.
It wasn't working.
And then you were like, I think we need to do a whole CG character. Now, if you know anything about CG characters, you're probably looking at like 2 months worth of work. To do 3 seconds of a ancillary character, right? And if you're going to put that kind of work, you want to put it on the pig or something else,
right?
So it's just like, wow, Jesus, like like I understand it's a cool thing, and it's probably befitting of deserving of something cool, but when you're on a budget and you have limited time and resources, I'm like, geez, that's I'm going to spend 2.5 months on this 3-second shot of a secondary character.
And that's sort of why, like, even I knew, like, that's a non-starter, right? That's a ridiculous thing to have to do. So in my mind, I'm just going, what if any tool is there out there that can maybe help circumnavigate this.
But it was such a good idea, though. Like having
Yeah.
a different creature.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
it's such a fantastic.
it's such,
way to
he's
set
the
it up.
doctor. Mark and I always talked about you talk about IPs, right? So literally you could have some legs with this where it's the doctor. You don't know what his history is. Maybe
Right.
there's 30 other monsters that are out and loose out there that experiments or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Well, but still, it helped paint, like to me, it helped paint
Yeah.
the pig as a victim because it very much like this
Yes.
guy was a victim.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in the killing, you feel like, oh, the guy the doctor gets his just desserts. But
Yeah.
well,
Lane,
structurally, story-wise,
Lane
I
did
think it's amazing.
he did
So-
on backstage, like he gave us a little tester that
Mm-hmm.
he did. And I thought there was like such empathy in
Yeah.
him. Like he was he pulled off like that sad sack, like,
Yeah.
I'm a meek guy and like,
Yeah.
and he has kind eyes, like it kind of worked,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're like, wow, like, you don't want to make him the monster, right? He's the reluctant,
He's a reluctant monster,
He's Frankenstein.
The feature
right?
version is the
he's-
heroes are trying to save him while he's currently eating people that deserve it.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, it's a little bit of a pretzel in that way, but it is cool. It's this idea that ultimately your horrific monster creature is sympathetic in a way because we sort of see what he comes from, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like
Yeah.
he's just like this faceless creature,
Yeah.
right? He actually has a history and
Yeah.
there's emotion behind it. And yeah, Lane actually wasn't even our first choice because the original script called for somebody much older, and the whole history of Gus and Moret was supposed to span decades of time and go back to like the 60s, and they were
Because we were trying to go with either the Vietnam or the
Yes.
World War II, like those actual. So there's some rooted in actual things that were happening.
Yeah.
And obviously, when we got our actors and we got the location, like it just didn't fit.
It didn't
so,
fit. So we had to change it around a bit. And even just killing the doctor like right away like that was a hard choice to make. We were like, do we have to do it? But that's how the story ends up
Right.
working.
it was a good choice.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't thank you guys enough for the amazing hard work that you all put into this. And obviously, thank you very much for joining me here today for this podcast. I just wanted to talk briefly before we stop, just about, what's everybody got going on, future plans. If you want to, drop where somebody could find you in your work. We're all artists here. TJ makes music and Pete paints these amazing figures and stuff. So if you want to just throw it out there.
yeah.
Come on, Pete, you
Corey?
go. No, you go. I mean, your statuettes are amazing.
Yeah, well, obviously Platypus, we have a couple movies that we're working on. I think there's one out on Amazon right now, which is Assassin's Club.
Assassin's Club.
Yep,
Yes.
so that's cool with Henry Golden and Sam Neill, which is kind of cool. So we just finished that, and then we just finished a movie in Vietnam, actually, a Vietnam,
Yep.
I think it's called Sound of the South. And we're working on a Michael Madsen movie right now.
Oh, cool movie. Civil War Vampires.
Civil War vampire movie.
Very
yeah.
into this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I like
that's
it.
cool.
I like it.
It's a little movie, which is great. And like as Mark said, I paint figures, which
Yeah,
is
Paintbypete.
Paintbypete is my Instagram, so you can check that
Yeah.
out. And then Mark and I are working on what's going to be next. Like we're going to put together.
Yeah, so
we're going
Red
to put to bed.
Octopus.
We're going to put to bed this second movie.
Right. We'll probably
And
do a little
then-
bit of a festival run with that. Maybe be a little more selective about where we go, or just try to
Yeah,
position
I also think
it.
it's really nice for the actors to do a festival
I
because
think
I
so,
think
too.
they really appreciate that. So you want to make sure you do that. And
Puts a bow on it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a nice thank you to
And these
to
will
those guys.
be the pig is now you can watch the pig for free on our YouTube channel, Red Octopus Films. You could also watch it on Riseflix, which is a new streaming service more targeted towards industry people looking to scout and work with different talent. But it's free to join. If you want to. There's other great short films.
And what is
on
that?
there.
Rise Films.
Riseflix.
Riseflix.
And they sort of curate, really good short film projects that they feel need to be propped up and given attention. So you could also watch the pig on there and support those guys.
Yep.
And Corey, what do you got?
Yeah,
going on?
I'm always working.
I know
on,
you're under NDA with stuff.
Yeah,
so.
no, I'm always working on stuff. I just did a
Corey's
fun
working
one.
on a really cool movie, but
Yeah.
he can't tell us. So, just so you know.
No, I just
But
did
you know it.
I just did a Michael Shannon, Luis Guzman, Eva Longoria film.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if it's a working title. It's currently called Dead Guy, but that's a really fun one. That's a fun comedy, and I don't know. There's a lot.
You shot that in New York?
We shot that in New York, yeah, up in Newburgh. literally just finished it like a week ago. So, and then I'm on Insta and CoreyPierno.com, and you know, obviously I've got some more stuff coming down the pipe, but not quite ready to talk about it yet. But
okay, is it mostly like is it stunt kind of stuff, or you're doing more like a creative?
Yeah, no,
I'm
branching out into just doing some of my own work and writing and directing, and specifically sci-fi and fantasy. Because you know, I love stunt stuff, but I've got more to share. So
absolutely, yeah. No, if you could branch out, by all means, do it.
I mean, I just have my music. It's under the name Go High on Spotify, and I'm Go High Music on Instagram. It's GOGHI. I'm just working on recording more, getting back to it. I took a little hiatus with it, but always writing songs, and now I just have to fix them all, and a lot of catching up to do. I'm also like just excited to work on everything we have coming down the pike, like getting better writing screenplays. And because I find like I always have all these ideas and I'll like run to Mark and I'm like, I have this awesome idea. But then I'm like, now seeing all the process that's behind everything, I'm like, the more you can just like fix it and push it forward, like do the outlines, get the screenplays, and just try to handle as much of it in physical form. So it's like a real idea. That's like the main focus, is like just keep that rolling to where that's consistent and we can have a process.
That's so true. There's a meme I saw the other day and made me think of you, because it's exactly how I feel. It's like, it's the one where he's like trying to jump the staircase. He's like, oh, this screenplay that I'm working on. And it's like, but my new idea. Yeah. Right. And it's like, you're always sort of fighting against this. Yeah. I want to finish this project. Oh, but wait, what about this idea? But I think it's good to sort of have multiple bullets in the chamber, right?
I mean, I worked with a lot of indie features, especially for like first or second or third time directors.
Yeah.
And I have never once worked on one of those where this wasn't something like they wrote it 5 years ago,
exactly,
or 10 years ago. Yeah. And then they went on and wrote other things, and now this was the time for that show.
Yes.
So I think you just got to write it and move right on to the next one and get it in the works and try and get it in a pipeline and some kind of workflow.
Yeah, it's like getting exposed to the process and seeing like, oh, this is the lifespan of like how something gets made. It makes you just more attuned to like, okay, when I have these ideas, like this is the process. So
honestly, you should just make it yourself.
I'm kind of feeling like not only the shorts, you know, we've done a bunch of like short documentary work that has been very successful on YouTube. You know, we did a great like Burt Young documentary. It was great. And
Chris Algieri, before he fought Manny Pacquiao and got
destroyed. He didn't do it. But I think that there's a part of me, and you know, we have to discuss, and you know, obviously there's how do we go about it, and you know, how feasible is it. But I think the next thing we do is like I
think a feature.
Full feature.
I think it's.
And we've been kicking around now for years and doing work, and it's like I think we're ready. And and it's almost like I don't want to invest more time in learning. Like at this point, you want to like. Yeah. All right, we're good enough. You know, like we could do this. So I think that's probably coming down the pipe.
Also, you're doing it from like such a place of strength because you have so many of these skill sets already ingrained.
Yeah.
You know, and so like other features where you have people who don't have your experience, you have to onboard all the other departments.
Mm-hmm.
But as a first feature of like just bootstrapping it, but just on a bigger scale, I think it's like poised.
Yeah.
You guys are poised to do it.
Hopefully
you call me.
We know.
Well, you're definitely being involved in the feature.
I think now we know like, as much as like the experience that these guys have, it's like, okay, what is required of me also like when I'm on set, and where am I not able?
Yeah.
Like even though I have the knowledge, but like physically while I'm directing, I can't be thinking about like this thing. Right. So now we have so much more knowledge in that regard of like, how do we supplement ourselves too?
And it'll still be somewhat guerrilla, right?
Of course,
I mean, you know.
yeah. But I think like it's just every little time, like every time we go at it, we learn a little bit more, and it gets you super comfortable for like, okay, now I think we can tackle something like a feature. We have enough. Yeah,
because Platt's been around since 2010. Right, so that's a long time.
I think it was Tarantino that said there's no better film school than trying to make a movie with your friends with no money.
Yeah.
That's how you learn how to make it.
Yeah.
Well, even in the like not like 2 years that I've been here, it's like I probably have been exposed to like every single element of making a movie, pre, post, everything. So it's you couldn't even get that in film school to have like such a condensed experience. So it's like the learning is endless with this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's good advice to sort of land on, is that if anybody's looking to do this and to listen. Work within your means, what you have, but like even everybody's got an iPhone now, and these things shoot like 4K.
I saw a commercial the other day.
60 frames per second. Like you can do some amazing stuff with just your phone and just some cheap mics off Amazon. Like just
sometimes you even got those lenses that you clip on.
Yeah,
I've actually done a show.
Yeah.
Where we did
Yeah, they
Nice
have
looking
anamorphic
stuff.
lens sets that you can pair on.
Yeah.
So that would be my advice: is just do it. And at the end of the day, it's not even something that you have to put out there. If it sucks, it's just go through the process.
Yeah. But I mean, the quality's pretty good now.
it's pretty good.
Pretty good.
All right. That'll do it for this episode. Thanks again, guys, for joining me. This was a lot of fun.
nice
We'll
seeing
have
everybody.
to do another one for the pen when it's
Definitely,
finished.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
All my friends are dead. All my friends have got no one left, and there's no one I can blame. It's just how it ends. So now it all just fades like yesterday.